Good morning and warm greetings. This is a sound check. Also, an invitation to let me know if you're on the chat or to silently reflect what you noticed yesterday in your practice, what you noticed about staying in your seat, connecting to the moment. Great. Thank you for the sound feedback. So this today we will be on the fourth of five inspirations for insight, this week's series. And invitation is to find a meditation posture that helps connect you to the moment after you've finished whatever last bits of settling in need to happen. Perhaps taking a couple of longer, slower, deeper breaths. Inviting the attention inwards. Relaxing, softening. Allowing the breath to connect you with your core. And then allowing the breathing to be natural. And settling in, noticing the sensations of being alive. Warmth or cool, a feeling of weight, and feelings of lightness. Noticing motion, vibrancy in the body. And inviting attunement to that vibrancy, the language of sensation. Allowing attention to settle on the process of breathing. Setting aside concerns of there or then. To tune in to the natural rhythm of your body. attending with care, kindness to any thoughts, emotions, distractions that come up, noticing them, allowing them to persist, and reconnecting with this breath, this moment. Noticing whatever arises with simplicity, and allowing the mind, the heart, to rest in contact with whatever is soothing, whatever is connecting, an embodied experience of this moment. And as you settle into this meditation practice, noticing anything that contracts the heart and mind, that brings up more tension, and seeing if it's possible to soften around it. Perhaps take a step back, allow space for it to move through. And noticing any sensations or feelings of ease, comfort, pleasant sensations, and appreciating those without hanging on, allowing them, resting in them. In these last minutes of meditation together, noticing how it feels in this moment, in the body, heart, and mind. And taking a moment to reflect back. If there were any moments of challenge or difficulty, meeting them with compassion. And if there were any moments of goodness, of benefit, kindness, calm, steadiness, awareness, appreciating those, noticing them, perhaps reflecting on what fed or supported them. And allowing them to soak through your own system, nourish your practice. And then from that place, perhaps with an internal gesture of generosity, offering the benefits of this practice outwards to the others in your life, the others in this world. May they be safe, happy, healthy. May they be peaceful, at ease, and free. May the goodness of this practice ripple out through our own minds and hearts and lives to all of the lives we touch and all of the lives they touch, outwards and outwards. May all beings be safe, happy, peaceful, and free. And may this practice be a cause and condition for the growth of love and liberation and peace in our world. Thank you for the sincerity of your practice. So, warm greetings, Sangha. Today, as I mentioned earlier, is the 4th of 5th 5 um, talks in a series on inspirations for insight. These are stories from the time of the Buddha and soaking some of the wisdom out of them together in ways that support the arising of insight in our practice. So today, when we left off yesterday, the Buddha had just awakened. We're fast forwarding some time now. And it's a story that happened not long after his young son, Rahula, joined the order, ordained. And this particular story happens when Rahula is about 7 years old, and it starts in mid conversation. And it's clear from the first question the Buddha asks that young Rahula had told a lie which was later discovered. So we can all relate to this, having been kids, maybe having lied since then. The Buddha gently shows his son using a bowl that a lying, progressively lying, can have a negative effect on spiritual practice. He describes a bowl being almost empty as of water, as being as empty as a person becomes in the spiritual life if they repeatedly lie. And then he kind of dramatically turns the bowl over and then turns it back upright to show no water left. And that is the effect over time. And we can imagine that his young son became sharply attentive in this moment. So it wasn't a shaming conversation or a blaming conversation, but it was direct. And the Buddha, rather than sort of castigating him or finger wagging, then provides a teaching, a kind of a pithy teaching to guide him in kind of a compass for behavior in the future, a compass to empathize with others and to recognize the impact of his actions on himself and others. And the teaching starts out with the Buddha asking, "What is the purpose of a mirror, son?" And Rahula says, "Well, for reflection, sir." And the Buddha then says, just like that, you should reflect before each action of body, speech, and mind. Will it cause affliction, suffering in myself, the other person, myself and the other? And if so, don't do it. And then the Buddha goes on, and I'm paraphrasing here because it's actually quite long, I'm summarizing. You should reflect during each action of body, speech, and mind. Will this cause affliction or harm? And if so, stop doing it right then. And then reflecting after each action of body, speech, or mind. Has this caused affliction or harm in myself, in the other person or people, or in all concerned? And if so, make a resolve not to repeat that. So, on the other hand, the Buddha says, if you reflect before, during, and after each action of body, speech, and mind, and discover, oh, this action led to benefit, to goodness for myself, the other person, or all involved, then it is fine to continue the action, to repeat it. So again, the image of a mirror reflecting on inward and outward actions. It's another way of talking about karma, kamma, action and result. It's also a teaching on conditionality, cause and effect, and empathy. A powerful guide to behavior, simple enough for a 7-year-old. And we're not talking here about absolute standards of right and wrong. Instead, what's offered is a simple way to use self-reflection as a compass for all of the actions of life. Is it harmful or beneficial? Is it afflictive or conducive to healing, to peace, to care? So I've found this teaching supports insight both directly and indirectly. As a direct support for insight, reflect on my own mind, on your own mind. And with mindful awareness, it's possible to observe one's own internal speech and actions of thought to assess which are afflictive to oneself or others, and to refrain from giving them any energy or excess energy. Well, for most people, it's usually easiest to start this by reflecting after meditation, maybe right at the end of a meditation, as we did at the end of this meditation preceding my talk. With practice, what this repeated reflection does is help a spontaneous, wordless understanding to arise during meditation, during an act of mental speech, during an act of thinking. So, using this kind of reflection is not an invitation to fight the difficult forces in your own mind. Rather, it's an invitation to meet them with softness, care, an understanding of their conditioned nature, and to notice the impact. Notice the impact. Eventually, through this process, that which causes suffering dissolves, it softens, or is transformed into wisdom, arrows into flowers. We learn from our own dukkha. Lama Surya Das, I was at a talk of his once, and he was asked if any of his neuroses had disappeared over his many, many years, decades of meditation. And I was so struck by his answer. He kind of laughed and he said, "Nothing's gone away, but it's so light now that I don't pay any attention to it. It has no affliction for me. It's just the mind doing its thing." I'm paraphrasing there. So eventually, the suffering is transformed either into wisdom or into something that we can just shrug, smile, say, okay, nature of the mind. Our systems learn through this process that, for example, generosity feels better than stinginess, that kindness has a much more beneficial effect than harshness, that simplicity is more easeful than complication. And another thing I take from this story is that mindful awareness is a form of honesty. You'll notice this in your own practice, that the understanding and capacity to see one's own mental activity can get sharper, keener, subtler, more conducive to insight, especially if we get interested in this reflection before and after. Affliction, harm, benefit, ease, that begins to invite more discernment into the mind. And this simple teaching invites us to turn our life energy and attention to cultivating those internal mental actions that are beneficial, whole making, simplifying. Gradually, there's more contentment and space, ease, and lightness. Then there's an indirect support for insight by reflecting on our actions of body and speech in the world. Not incidentally, this also serves as a compass for navigating life harmoniously. Reflecting outwardly, inwardly on the outward process, has there been benefit or harm to another? This is another way of talking about ethical conduct, sila. It's also a way of continuing to learn and grow from reflection on actions. Many centuries after the Buddha's time, the field of clinical chaplaincy training evolved, and I was a chaplain for a while. I went through that training at first, not with the idea of becoming a professional, which I did, but with the idea of it deepening my practice. And in particular, there was a model in that training of action, reflection, action. The priceless opportunity, because we learned from each other, those of us that were embedded in the hospital or wherever the people are embedded, we learned our impact on each other through honest, reflective conversations for the purpose of being as safe for others, as skillful, and as self-aware as possible. And a lot of time would be spent writing and reflection on our own interactions with others. So this process actually, in some ways, echoes the Buddha's last piece of advice to his son. If he Rahula discovered that he'd done something that caused affliction or harm, the Buddha advised him to tell someone that he respected and trusted. And this itself was not for the purpose of being, again, punished, but for the purpose of learning, changing, adapting. It's a growth mindset that's helpful to work through these things. It's said that the purpose of a spiritual teacher, a spiritual friend, is to hold a mirror up to the back of our heads to help us see what we can't see. Now, just like in meditation, the vast majority of us learn this kind of reflection by noticing the impact of an action afterwards. If this is you, you're in good company. The Buddha presents this teaching in chronological order, but most of us experience it in reverse, reflecting on the effect of thought, speech, and action afterwards. And even during can be more of a contemplation. And Naomi Shihab Nye, the poet, glosses the word contemplation as a long, loving look. A long, loving look. So gradually, with this kind of honesty, care, love, compassion, mindfulness, awareness, ethical sensitivity increase, and we notice actions and their valence that I've been discussing here during and even beforehand. It's a gradual cultivation of wisdom and compassion, and it gradually leads to more confidence, strength, lightness, and joy. So, dear Sangha, my invitation to you for the next 24 hours, your homework, should you choose to do it, is to reflect either during or after or before one action of body, one action of speech, and one action of mind. What do you notice? Harm or benefit? Affliction or lightness? And how are you able to be with that? The most important thing is to hold whatever you discover in kindness. Thank you for your kind attention.